From the hub, we have bus company. That's up to the buses to decide. From the hub, we go out to various. For an example, we had 2 bus loads of kids going to Pinkerton Academy, 2 buses to Londonderry, a bus load to Bedford, a bus load to Bow, and another bus load to Pembroke Academy. So all of those buses would leave from the hub, but they would all, the spokes would feed into the hub every morning, bringing the kids from Hooksett neighborhoods. And then at night, when all of the buses returned to the hub, they would leave from the hub back out to their neighborhoods. That's the whole idea of the hub and spoke system. I have been making contact. The other thing I want to talk about is leads of these groups that we're about to discuss. I'm asking for volunteers, so if you're out of that silent majority out there, it's time to step up, take charge a little bit. We'd like you to volunteer. Just pick something that you have an interest in. I have an interest in transportation and the transportation system. That doesn't mean just because I'm the lead on it, you can't participate. As a matter of fact, I would love somebody to do major parts of the transportation system. The lead, all they are, is to keep the group event organized. So let's just say on our general Facebook page, somebody gets out there and they start talking about bus transportation. As the lead, I would just ask them to, politely ask them, could you please repost all of your stuff in the event? Now, an event is like a filing cabinet. It keeps all of the thoughts organized and all of the posts organized in one place. And the posts are kind of like folders that you put inside the filing cabinet. If you just go to our Help General page and you start posting there, after a while, as you'll see your experience on our it starts to get lost because it's a sea of constantly changing knowledge that's being exchanged out there. There's great debate going on about various issues, but your great information about Bow High School, let's say, could get lost in all of that sea of information if it isn't properly stored. So the idea of somebody being a lead is just to remind people to, that's good information, could you store that up in our Bow event, let's say, if you had information about Bow High School. So that's really all you have to do as a lead. It doesn't mean you need to lead the charge for that event. It just means you're kind of an organizer and you make sure that the data that we're posting and collecting gets put in the right filing cabinet, okay? So a little bit of what I was going to talk about tonight, but since we're short-staffed, I'm just going to show you a couple of things I've been working on. This is just a drawing. We do this with Google Maps, and I know you can't see that from here. I'll post this stuff as we make more progress on it. But basically, Google Maps is taking an existing parking lot right here, which is right off of exit 10. And this would be basically an example of a hub. And so the buses would come in from various routes into our hub, and all the other buses that are going to the various schools are going to be waiting there for the children to board. And this will all be done by time. So in other words, the children have to be on board by 7 in the morning or 7:15 in the morning. Whatever time scheduling tells us, they have to be there in order to make it to their school on time. And then from this designated hub, the buses would leave to the various high schools with the children on board. Now, we could, when we start talking about where is the hub, do we build a new hub, do we have to get land for the hub? As I was putting this together, it kind of makes sense to do what this town, Arundel, is doing up in Maine. They are where I've been getting some of these ideas, so no need to reinvent the wheel here. They ship their kids out to 3 different high schools. They've been doing it for years. And the hub and spoke system is basically what they use. And they use the parking lot of their middle school there. So there's, we could toss around different ideas of what would be the best place to send the kids out from, and maybe we even have 2 launching pads. But the bottom line is we don't want to incur any more costs if we don't have to. So if we already own the parking lot, let's say at Cawley Middle School, the one over there behind the soccer fields, that's a big enough area. As long as we make sure we're not going to be overcrowded with buses, overcrowding with the middle school. So those are the kind of ideas I'm looking for. If you've got ideas on the transportation, go ahead and post them in the transportation issue site, event site. That's what we want to do. So enough of that. I had some drawings we're going to pass around tonight. This just gives you a sense of what we're talking about. If you think of these as all school buses lined up in the morning in this parking lot or this hub, you've got a train of buses ready to go to Pinkerton, a train ready to go to Londonderry, and maybe a couple going to Manchester, one going to Bow, one going to Pembroke, and basically I have every school here recognized. But that's the whole idea. The buses are waiting for the kids come in from their neighborhoods, the buses drop them off, they walk to their appropriate buses. Once all the buses have delivered the kids, the buses can leave. Same thing is repeated at nighttime. We have to make sure we coordinate with the schools on the times they leave because, of course, it takes less time to go to Pembroke Academy than it does to Londonderry High School. And we want everybody arriving at the hub just about the same time because we don't want kids sitting on the bus waiting for other kids to get there. That's going to be our biggest challenge. But we're all adults. We all want what's best for the kids, and I think we'll be able to get the schools to cooperate. So that's enough about transportation for tonight. It's an ongoing project. Welcome anybody that wants to help out there. And we already have some folks volunteering. I'm trying to give you some kudos here. I don't remember what her name is, but somebody has already stepped up. Jill Eastman Cahoon. Shout out to Jill. Thanks for stepping up. Jill is she is a specialist with mapping routes, and so we're hopeful we can use her expertise and her experience in that job. All right, we're going to move on. So Steve Mosley is the guy I contacted at Kennebunk Main Transportation. He's the director out there, and I also spoke to a lead bus driver from the same system, and her name is Joyce Letelier. So I had a great conversation with both of them, very helpful people. I mean, they get it. They're trying to help the kids. So the next events we have, and I'll tell you the ones we need volunteers for and the ones we already have leads for. Bow High School information. We need a volunteer to be a lead there. Pinkerton Academy information. We already have a lead contact. That's Mark Messina. Pembroke High information. We need a volunteer. Bedford High, Londonderry High, Manchester, Goffstown, all of those, we need volunteers. Again, just to direct the information to put it in the right filing cabinet. That's all we need you to do there. The next event is called Receiving and Sending High School Database Software. I'm also volunteering to be a lead contact on that. I don't write that type of software for a living, but I do know people who do. And what I want to do is have somebody create the database software, database software for us to use and basically give out to the receiving and sending schools. It's going to coordinate the databases of students that they already have, so the back end is going to need to understand the various interfaces of the databases that contain the student's name and information. And then it's going to the system will coordinate with the receiving and sending schools. Because once we get multiple school contracts, kids are going to apply to different schools. They may get accepted to a school, and they may get rejected from schools. So we don't really want humans to be involved in that process because it's a lot of overhead, which means a lot of extra money that we're going to have to pay people to do that job. So we want to keep our costs low. By designing a software interface and a software database program to do all that work and coordinate it electronically and securely, we believe we can do that at zero cost. I'm going to look to get that work volunteered. So I'll need help speccing that out if anybody's interested. And if you have contacts or if you're a software developer yourself, you do software, we're very interested in your talents. Okay, finally, the high school choice boilerplate contract. That lead contact is Todd Lizotte. Todd is at a town council meeting tonight. Mark Myville is also at a budget committee member meeting tonight. So a lot of our volunteers are pulled in different directions, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate them volunteering for help. The boilerplate contract, just an idea there, that's the smaller contract, less restrictive, that we want to do with every community that wants to be involved in taking Hooksett High School students. What we're looking for there is a shorter term contract, no more of these long-term marriages with these towns, because they change over time. So what may be good in 5 years may not be so good in 15 years. So to take the risk out of it, we go 5-year or less short-term contracts. The other thing we're looking for is representation on people's school boards. We can ask for it, doesn't mean we're going to get it, but we want them to know right at the front end what type of relationship we want for our children. Right now, we have been going to Manchester schools since 1902. I had a volunteer dig that information up for me. 1902, we've basically been married to Manchester, and we have never been asked or they have never proposed to amend their charter to allow Hooksett representation on their Board of School Committee, which means our children have been going there since 1902 without Hooksett adult representation for them. There's two things about Hooksett representation. One is we're more connected with their school board. We understand what they're thinking about, the decisions they're making that affect our kids. But more importantly, Hooksett residents are here to help. Whoever we work with, whatever town we work with, we are going to be there and assisting them solve their problems. We're not creating problems, we are like to help solve problems. So that's why we want to be involved with their school boards. So personal examples of breach is another note I have on here. We say, why is this necessary? We've been at I've been personally at 2 meetings. We had a Manchester Come See Us in Hooksett, and I saw what happened at the Manchester Candia meeting. And basically, Manchester is asking the tough questions. So in other words, if we make a claim, we need to be ready to back it up. And that's what we did early on when we made these cards. We back up every fact we present from this group with double sources, and we're ready to present that information to anybody that asks. So the idea of personal examples of breach is if somebody has something that they're claiming is going on in the high school, and there are plenty of them, we really need to document it, take written statements, and get signed statements so that when we're asked, where did you get that information? And that has happened multiple times now dealing with the mayor of Manchester. And that's a great question to ask because he's got to make sure it's valid data. We have to be ready with paper in hand to say, here's where we got the information. Signed, written statements from parents that have children in these systems. We're not putting anybody at risk. All they're doing is telling the truth. And they're signing their name saying, this is the truth, and you can use this as a fact because it's a fact. So that's all we're saying is let's be prepared when we go into our meetings. And it just makes us look like a more of a reliable group. We do our homework, which we all do. The voting rules opinion poll. That was something that's happened since our last meeting. We basically said at our last meeting, you know, we had maybe 10% of the people in our group. We have 400 members, and you know, maybe we have 30 active members that are out there really doing the hard work involved. And a lot of people are just in the background watching, and that's okay too. But at our face-to-face meetings, we were taking votes on some very important issues. And we basically decided, you know what, this isn't fair that this small minority is speaking for the 400 group members. So we decided to put it out there to a vote, a virtual vote. And the vote came in. Again, there weren't a lot of people that voted out of 400, but still the majority said that, that they wanted to have a voice. So we now, instead of doing any voting at these face-to-face meetings, all our voting now is done electronically. So all I can do is ask you to please, when we put something up for a vote, participate. Don't worry, Facebook has an odd thing. When you vote, your picture shows up. It just shows who's voting for what. Don't ever be intimidated by anybody on this group that's going to challenge you or cut you down because you're voting. We won't tolerate it. Because you should not be afraid to vote. This is America. This is your chance to voice your opinion on issues. And I will respect that in this group, and all of us will respect that. So just go ahead. I want more participation. We all do, because it is a democracy. This is your chance to participate in a democracy. It's a virtual democracy, and that's why the beauty of it. You are all very busy people. We know that. We get that. Can't come to the face-to-face meetings, so participate virtually. That's what we want. The other thing we took a vote on was we are now allowing outside non-resident Hooksett members to join HELP. That's important because we want to get shared experience from people, let's say from Auburn or Candia. And before, our rules were limited to Hooksett residents only. So it only made sense to open the group up to other people that can provide knowledge to us and insight that we may need going forward as we plot out these courses for our kids. The last thing I wanted to talk about before we get into new business is Help Facebook 101. Tammy did a great job putting some information out there about some of the basic nuts and bolts of running and using Facebook. So anytime we come up with something that we say, geez, we should remember to do that, or tell people about it, we'll try to put it in the Help Facebook 101 event group, okay? So that filing cabinet is a good thing if you're a new member. Go out there, check it out. One thing I want to mention on that, basically it's about posting. Be careful that if somebody has a conversation going and they're debating, let's say something about Bow High School, please try not to jump into the middle of their conversation and start talking about Pinkerton or, Concord. In other words, try to keep our discussions and our debates on one topic at a time. We're doing a pretty good job of it, and I think we're getting better as we mature and go forward. But we still see once in a while, these big conversations that go, and we drag all kinds of different topics in. The reason we want to try to keep them as concise as possible is you got to remember, not everybody's active at the same time. So when people come back in and they want to view your discussion and see what you were debating about the night before, it's really great if it's all about one subject in that one post, and all the debate that goes on in that post is about one item. If you want to start a new debate, just do a new post and get that new topic going. And people can be debating or discussing on different posts at the same time. But we're all going to get better at that. We're all guilty of it. But as we go forward and mature, we want to try to do that better so that the people coming in, it just doesn't look like a big sea of data out there. It actually looks like some controlled topic discussions. I mean, we want to try to educate people as much as we can. All right, new business. Again, we had Todd Lazat tonight was going to give us his 50,000-foot view of our process. Unfortunately, Todd, he had his conflict tonight. More important at the town council. Todd's needed there for our town. So we're going to skip over that. What did we learn from the Hooksett Manchester School Board meeting? That was just something I wanted to open up for discussion, because I am not the final word on any of that. I had my own impressions of what I took out of that meeting. I personally would have liked to see more of the Manchester School Board members participate in a discussion with our school board members, and it really, to me, seemed like the mayor controlled the meeting. Again, this is a democracy. These school boards represent the people, and if they're not allowed to speak, or if they choose not to speak, they're not really being good representatives of the people, because the people want to be represented. And so that's the only thing I have to say about that. So again, do you have any comments on that, Tammy, what your takeaway was on the Manchester meeting?
I was happy to see that the public was able to voice their opinion.
That's a great point. For those of you who didn't read the newspapers or didn't see any of our posts, Manchester wanted us to come to Manchester, and they called that a neutral ground. The reason it was neutral is because it was held at the Health Building instead of City Hall. That they called neutral. Well, luckily our school board, as Tammy said, stood strong and said, no, we're the client here, and you're the vendor of our services of education. You come to our building in Hooksett. It's easier for our people to get here. We have our camera, video equipment set up. We're all set up to do this. You come here. And the good thing is Manchester obliged, and they did come out, which I thought they reached across the aisle, which was good. And our citizens were able to speak. And the good news is, and I've heard this from Manchester people too, our Hooksett citizens spoke well. They represented themselves well. There were, nobody was screaming their head off or, trying to, get any, I don't know how to say this, but it was good and civilized. And that is, I think, good for Hooksett, because we came across as knowledgeable people. We're interested for our kids, and we wanted Manchester to be sure that they knew that our kids were very important to us, and we weren't messing around. I know some other people in the group, you've all been wanting a stronger stance from our school board, and I think as we go forward, if we don't see action out of Manchester, which I think now we're starting to see some delay tactics, stall tactics, then maybe now we're going to start ratcheting up the pressure. But you have to, benefit of the doubt, you give it to the other party, and you let them make the move. If they choose not to and drag their feet, then you have to move forward without them. So I think that's kind of where we're at now. Mm-hmm. But kudos to our school board and the job they did. The sad part is I did attend the Candia meeting. The Candia parents were not allowed to speak. That, to me, was a travesty. They had a lot to say that night, but because the rules were set in Manchester, Manchester did not allow for the public input like we did in Hooksett. And I got a chance to speak to a lot of the Candia parents. As a matter of fact, I handed out our cards. They were very interested. I invited them to join the group. I even invited them to create their own group and organize their parents. Because I've been having great discussions with Jim O'Connell, who is the president of the Citizens for Manchester Education, a very powerful and strong group in Manchester right now. And I've made him aware that we have families in Hooksett that will continue to send their kids to Manchester. So I want to try to join those people up with Jim, because they are fighting for the kids. They're fighting for Manchester kids, and they're fighting for Hooksett kids as well. That's the only thing I have to say there. Next thing was, what did we learn from the Candia and Manchester school board meeting? Again, basically your rights were violated in my opinion. They weren't allowed to speak. Dr. Phil did speak up very well for Candia. I guess my only point is I'd like to see Dr. Phil speak as strongly for Hooksett. I think he's done a great job speaking and being strong for Candia. I think he's done a great job speaking and being strong for Auburn. And now I think it's Hooksett's turn. We need to step up the power with our superintendent as well. And we want to see him represent us just as strongly as he is for Candia and Auburn. So, Dr. Phil, we're behind you, and it's time to step it up a notch. So here we go. We are into open discussion. This is the time to stand on your soapbox, hold the meeting control device, and tell the world why you're here. Well, Tammy, why are you here?
I'm here to help Hooksett find a better school solution for our students, for our
Perfect.
kids.
And she's taking the minutes, another thankless task, and I appreciate that very much. So we wanted to make sure we did the video for you guys, for all you virtual listeners out there. We do invite you, if you have the time, next time we have a face-to-face meeting, join us. But your participation is what we need right now. We enjoy the silent majority, but there comes a time when you have to say to yourself, this is a time in history where I'm going to make a decision, and we're drawing a line in the sand right now. The line in the sand, as I've said to the mayor and the school board over there, I've said the line in the sand is simple. You are either on the side of the line that is for the children, or you are on the side of the line that's against the children. There's a time now where we won't allow people to straddle the line anymore. It's no longer acceptable to put one foot in this side and one foot in the other. Speak with your mouth and say that you are for the children, and then with your actions you do something different. So that time is now. We've drawn the line in the sand. Manchester's heard from their own citizens, they've heard from Candia citizens, and they've heard from Hooksett citizens. So now it's time for action. So with our school board, we're going to move in parallel with them. We're going to support them with anything they need us to do, because we're here to help them. Where mostly, though, our focus is here to help the kids of Hooksett. Thank you. Anything, Tammy, closing?
No, good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to you all working hard for the kids of Hooksett.